Good morning. Dr. Nick Walker here, coming to you on video. Wish I could be there to see you in person. But hi, hello. Here we are talking about all kinds of minds. So, diversity is a source of creative potential, creative synergy. And when we talk about the benefit of all kinds of minds in the world, that's really what we're talking about, is this potential for creative synergy given any problem for which we need a creative solution, given the task of creating better futures for ourselves, given the task of creativity on scales small, large, global. We benefit from all kinds of minds and their multiple perspectives and their multiple ways of thinking and their multiple modes of perception. And we benefit particularly by bringing these minds together, by the creative synergy between them. That, sure, if you have a given thing that needs solving, a given idea one needs to explore, well, you put a whole lot of different minds working on it and you get a whole variety of solutions, and that's great. Good to have more options and more perspectives, and you never know which ones will turn out to be helpful. But more to the point, the synergy that when you start putting these different minds together and they have to find ways to work together and share perspectives and communicate perspectives to each other, when they have to find ways to understand one another's perspectives and make their own perspectives clear, well, then these creative synergies emerge. These solutions and ideas begin to emerge that no single mind within the collective might have come up with on its own, but it's in the chemistry between and among different minds that creative synergy appears, that magic happens. Creativity is something that can be multiplied, that can be accelerated by the interaction between different consciousnesses and how different minds with their different perceptions and ways of thinking and approaches, well, chemistry happens among them, and what you get is something that is inevitably greater than the sum of its parts. And of course, the first creative challenge is thus the challenge of how our minds work together. How can we get different kinds of minds working with each other? And that's very exciting to explore. How do you create these contexts? How do we develop common languages and ways of understanding each other and boost our capacity to be open to different ways of thinking? So all of these are crucial to this idea of neurodiversity, and it takes all kinds of minds. Now, the work of the neurodiversity movement has often been focused on accommodation, on sort of where the neurodiversity intersects disability rights, disability advocacy, because one has to accommodate different body minds in order to enable their participation. So regardless of how many different kinds of minds exist, the only ones that we benefit from are the ones where we find ways to actually enable them to participate in the socio-cultural creative processes, to participate in the collective creativity of humanity, and that means accommodation of the people's different needs. And so that aspect is crucial and has for a while been central, but it's also crucial that we remember that the real point here is in enabling everyone's participation. I mean, there's this aspect of we just want to care about all humans, bring all humans in, enable all humans participation in society, enable all humans to fulfill their best creative potentials and have good quality of life. We want that for people, of course. We don't want anyone to be disabled and excluded through lack of accommodation. But also, there's the benefit to the collective of humanity as a whole, the benefit to communities and to humanity on every scale, including a global level, that comes from inclusion. There is the greater creative synergy. We all benefit, not only in terms of it's the right and compassionate thing to do to enable everyone's participation in society and to try to meet everyone's needs and give everyone access, but also we all benefit because the more different body minds we can accommodate and welcome and embrace, well, the more creative synergy we are creating to enrich the entire human community in terms of our capacity to collectively create a better world and create better futures for ourselves. So this diversity is crucial. It takes all kinds of minds to move us forward into a better consciously created future. And in that sense, you know, I'm certainly a neurodiversity scholar and a neurodiversity advocate. I'm also a futurist and really shamelessly utopian about the potentials of neurodiversity and the potentials of what I call neurocosmopolitanism, where we take the same cosmopolitan attitude towards neurodiversity as we ideally seek to take towards cultural diversity. This idea, we understand increasingly in this world that there's no normal culture or there's no one right or superior culture, and that everyone benefits from cultural hybridity and the creative interplay of cultural exchange. We all benefit from that, from a broad multiculturalism and an open-minded approach to what we can learn from this cross-cultural chemistry. And the same thing applies to neurodiversity, this neurocosmopolitan spirit of there's no one right or normal way for a human mind to function. There's just this neurodiversity, this wild difference among minds, my wild variation, and so many different ways that humans can perceive and think and communicate and interact with the world and others, so many different ways that consciousness can develop. And in that diversity, when we embrace it and drop ideas of, oh, there's one normal or right way to be, when we plunge into that diversity and the uncertainty created by that diversity and courageously embrace the uncertainties of it and the ambiguities of how do we work with different minds and minds vastly different from our own, well, that's where the beauty of creative synergy happens. Now, what I want to talk about here also is moving beyond what I call neuroessentialism. I want to talk about neuroqueering, neurodiversity. And so when I talk about neuroessentialism, what I mean is that there's been an unfortunate tendency in the neurodiversity movement and in neurodiversity scholarship to limit our sense of what neurodiversity means, to think in terms of, there's neurotypicality, that's like kind of a dominant cognitive majority, and then there's like specific types of neurodivergence. I've seen these charts and illustrations of like, oh, there's this, there's autism, and there's dyslexia, and there's all these different ways to be neurodivergent. And we limit ourselves with that, with this idea that, oh, you're born neurotypical, you have this type of brain, or you're born autistic, or you're born dyslexic, or born with this or that particular neurocognitive variant, or combination of neurocognitive variants. And this whole idea that there are different neurotypes. Now, it's not necessarily false, and it's potentially useful. It's certainly been extremely useful to me and most other autistic people I know to have this term autistic and to think of ourselves as autistic and build autistic community around that and compare notes and do autistic rights advocacy and such. Yeah, it's got its use. But in terms of looking at, it takes all kinds of minds, in terms of looking at how to maximize the collective human creative potential that's intrinsic in neurodiversity, we limit ourselves when we have this essentialist view of fixed neurotypes, of your brain is neurotypical or autistic or whatever. That's limiting. It's a narrow range. It's not all kinds of minds. It's a whole lot of little specific boxes that people get fitted into, which can overlap and such. And I don't think it's scientifically accurate. People have looked very hard for specific biomarkers to lend scientific credence to the categories we divide people into so often. But the biomarkers aren't really that clear and solid, and it's not like there are these clear absolute distinctions of, oh, you have an autistic brain or you don't. The evidence around what are specific biomarkers that divide us into different types is very vague, and these neurotypes are really socially constructed categories, and they have purpose, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes these categories get in the way. There's no such thing as a normal brain, and there's no such thing as a neurotypical brain. That would be just another word for a normal brain. When I talk about neurotypicality, what I mean is just behaving in accordance with dominant social norms of how a so-called normal person behaves. So behaving in compliance with local standards of neuronormativity. That's what I mean by neurotypicality. It's just a performance, a learned way of acting normal that is instilled in people, and some people are capable of doing that, of putting on that normal act. And as long as they're doing it, we can say, oh yeah, they're neurotypical, they're practicing neurotypicality, they're performing neurotypicality. Some people are just not capable of passing for whatever the local standards of normal are. So we can say certainly they're not neurotypical. But nobody's born neurotypical. Nobody's doomed to spend their lives being neurotypical. It's just a constructed category and a constructed performance. There is no neurotypical brain. There's no intrinsically neurotypical person. Anybody can be neurodivergent in various ways. You can't make yourself autistic if you're not autistic, for instance, but you can certainly stop performing normalcy and explore the weirder potentials of your brain. And there's so many ways to be neurodivergent and to lean into your neurodivergent potentials to do what I call neuroqueering, to queer your normativity and bust out of the shell of normativity. There's so many ways to queer your neurocognitive functioning, to make yourself neuroqueer. People do it by doing lots of psychedelics. People do it by meditating a lot. There's all sorts of exciting brain changes that happen in people from the practices they do, from long-term commitment to meditation practices, from doing lots of psychedelics, from various mind-body transformative practices, from even being a dedicated musician for one's whole life, develops different parts of the brain. Urban cab drivers, like London and New York City cab drivers, notoriously, have like really interesting brain development things happen as a result of memorizing the streets. All these things we do alter the neural pathways in the brain, and these are all ways of being neurodivergent. There's all these existing methods and practices, this transformative or transpersonal practices designed to bring out various potentials of human consciousness, martial arts training, and various exciting forms of yoga and other such transformative spiritual practices, embodiment practices that all alter the consciousness and alter neurocognitive functioning in interesting ways. So everyone's body mind is customizable. Everyone's neurocognitive functioning is wildly customizable. And that doesn't necessarily fit into any box. We have certain specific labels for like, oh, okay, these particular, if you fit into these particular patterns of experience and cognition, we can say you're autistic, but it goes way beyond that. The potentials really are infinite. And what I would like to see in terms of the direction of neurodiversity scholarship and neurodiversity creative exploration is more exploration of that, of let's move away from putting people into little boxes and talking about neurotypes, and start looking at, well, what do you want your neurocognitive functioning to be like? What do you want? How do you want to customize your body mind? Whether you're starting out as autistic or dyslexic or none of the above, or whether you're starting out with something like that or not, how do you want to customize it? How do you want to personally explore and cultivate the weird potentials of your mind? And with more people doing that, what we get is not just, all these different minds based on how people are born, the different neurocognitive styles that emerge from accidents of genetics and developmental environment, but also an intentional neurodiversity, an active neuroqueering, where we move beyond this essentialist idea of, oh, you are whatever you're born as, and start looking at, well, what do you want to be? Approach your own neurocognitive functioning as a creative canvas. How do you want to transform yourself? How do you want to customize your neurocognitive style and your potentials, and what practices will get you there? And what happens there is we are expanding the scope of human neurodiversity, not just settling for the enormous creative potential that's already there based on different people being born with different neurocognitive styles and proclivities, but also increasing the amount of human neurodiversity So not just, oh, there's like neurotypical people and autistic people and all that, but there's like, oh, okay, well, I was born autistic and then I did this and this and this and this to alter my consciousness and expand my mind and develop these particular potentials. And now my brain is weird in a wholly different, unique way. And, this person was born not autistic and they did all these interesting things to become weirder in how their mind worked, to explore unique potentials that appealed to them. And now they're weird in this whole unique way. And it's not about you're just limited to what you're born with. Nobody's doomed to spend their lives being neurotypical, because everybody has these wildly weird cognitive potentials they can lean into and cultivate and develop. And so this is where I think the next frontier of neurodiversity is, and the next frontier of human creative potential is really saying, as an individual, how do I want to cultivate my mind? Now I have this mind, and maybe it started out neurodivergent in some way, or maybe it didn't. But what do I want to do with it that's unique? How do I want to shape my consciousness? And what do I want to contribute to the human creative collective process, to our collective creativity and our collective field of neurodiversity? Expand the field of neurodiversity, let go of narrow categories, and start looking at just how many different kinds of wildly different minds we can create. So that's my message for you all today, and happy neuroqueering. Please enjoy your brain.